2 people killed and 11 others injured at a Madden NFL tournament.
The killer has been identified as 24-year-old David Katz out of Baltimore, Maryland.
Tropical storm Lane leaving Hawaii underwater. The Big Island slammed with more than 4 feet of rain. Dozens of residents forced to evacuate their homes as officials warn of life-threatening flash flooding.
Tributes pouring in for Senator John McCain. We're expected to learn more today about the memorial services scheduled for this week.
On Wednesday, his casket will be brought to the state capitol building where he will lie in state for public viewing.
President Trump's approval rating, 90% approval from Republicans.
I absolutely love this president. I think that what he did in this country was the most necessary thing by killing political correctness.
There you have it. Hawaii wins it. Hawaii is the best. Tonight, but we're just getting warmed up, just getting started, already fired up. Yeah, this party ain't nothing.
Yep, we're just getting warmed up live on this Monday, August 27th. It's a beautiful Monday here in the big town, and Ainsley is out, and Rachel is in.
Thanks for having me back, you guys.
Good to have you.
And on a Monday, we do make sure to report 2 hours early for rehearsal and stretch out. Because you say we got to be warmed up, because we want to come off cold off the couch after 2 days on ice. We're going to pull something.
Yeah, a little yoga in the morning.
Yes, absolutely.
You don't want to see that.
What time exactly is the rehearsal?
4 o'clock. Okay. Yeah, we had to use a stand-in today. Obviously, you overslept. We did the whole show already. This is a review.
That's called Fox and Friends First. It's live.
Yes. That's right. That's
not exactly
Rob.
a rehearsal. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. We've got a busy news week, and we start this hour with a Fox News alert. And the hunt for clues spanning more than 750 miles after a man opened fire at a video game tournament in Jacksonville after he lost a game.
Heavily armed agents raiding the suspect's home in Baltimore overnight. The 24-year-old is accused of killing 2 and injuring nearly a dozen before turning the gun on himself.
All right, Phil Keating's all over this. He's live on the scene in northern Florida, in Jacksonville, with the very latest. Phil.
Yeah, the Sheriff's Department not releasing an official motive at this point, but according to one witness, the gamer, the suspect and killer, apparently lost and then pulled out a gun and started shooting. The Landing here in downtown Jacksonville over my shoulder, very popular place with restaurants, bars, and shops, live music. But suddenly everything changed dramatically at 1:30 yesterday afternoon.
People were being trampled, people were hiding, everybody was screaming in fear.
A friend who was inside told me that when everything started happening, a lot of the guys actually barricaded themselves in a very large bathroom, and they were just kind of behind the stalls. So they stayed in there the entire time. There was really no way to escape where we were playing from. You were pinned in there.
This was a qualifying tournament for the Madden NFL Championship Series. The winners here get the right to go to Vegas and compete for a total purse of $200,000. The suspect and killer, the only person police and sheriff's deputies say is responsible here, 24-year-old David Katz out of Baltimore. ATF and FBI searched his apartment, his townhouse, yesterday, and they closed down that scene last night. And according to witnesses, it was absolutely terrifying, chaotic, and it was a pure panic. The 2 victims that are dead, 2 dead, 9 wounded by the gunfire. The 2 dead, Taylor Robertson out of Ballard, West Virginia, and Eli Clayton out of Woodland Hills, California.
So we know that the suspect used at least one handgun to commit this act, and we are working, again, with our partners at ATF on that aspect of the investigation.
So this is a pretty big tournament, very popular amongst the gaming community, all of the people that play Madden online with their competitors around the country. Some of them were actually meeting for the very first time here at this tournament. So people around the country had come here for this. It's a big deal. According to one of the gamers, he said people were just inside having fun, playing the game they love. And then all of a sudden, the shooting started happening. Back to you guys.
Hey, Phil, I was there. The statue of Andrew Jackson's right there in front. This is a horrible incident, but this is not usual for that area, right? Isn't that very safe?
There have been a couple of other shootings at the landing over the past few years, but typically it is pretty safe. It was more popular as an entertainment destination in years past. However, it's still a happening spot on weekends. And like I mentioned, some weekday nights, there's live music playing and people gathered around having good times. And unfortunately, in this case, suddenly somebody pulled out a gun and started shooting.
Wow.
They did indeed. All right. Phil Keating live in Jacksonville. We thank you very much. We're going to have the Attorney General for the great state of Florida, Pam Bondi, on with us live at 8:15. She's going to brief us on the very latest on what was going through that guy's head. Crazy. As best we know, he lost a game and then tried to kill as many people as he could.
And then all of a sudden, celebrities from Bette Midler to Tom Arnold start tweeting out about guns. This is all about guns. So that's what's going to be an incident. Hey, this could also be part of the dialogue and that big battle with Governor Scott and Senator Nelson for that Senate seat.
Right, so. And by the way, there's a primary tomorrow in Florida, so could have an impact.
All right. Meanwhile, you saw the news flash here on the Fox News Channel on Saturday night. John McCain, the Vietnam War hero and political icon, lost his battle to an aggressive form of brain cancer on Saturday night. The schedule of his various ceremonies this week has been released, and we're going to show you that on Wednesday, the senator will lie in state at Arizona State Capitol. Then on Thursday, there's going to be a funeral at North Phoenix Baptist Church. Joe Biden is expected to speak. On Friday, he will lie in state at the U.S. Capitol Rotunda.
That's right. Saturday, there was going to be a procession that will pass by the Vietnam Memorial. And then Sunday, there will also be a funeral at the National Cathedral. Then there will be another funeral on Sunday, a private funeral at the Naval Academy Chapel. And then he'll be buried there nearby next to his best friend, Chuck Larson, a buddy of his, so that he loved dearly, and he requested to be buried next to him.
He did. He wanted to be buried alongside the Severn River there at the Academy, not at Arlington, where his father and his grandfather are buried.
Right. It's also very interesting that President Obama's been asked to speak, it looks like, as well as President Bush.
Right.
It seems as though, and it doesn't look like President Trump will attend, but Vice President Mike Pence will. Meanwhile, as you know, Senator John McCain was not shy about being in front on every issue. You had no doubt where he stood, whether the economy's collapsing or a war in Iraq was imminent or the surge needed to happen or there was an uprising in the Ukraine. He was there wanting to take a stand. And, Steve, you remember there were so many times he was on our couch.
He was. John McCain was a friend of this program for over 20 years, and he stopped by a lot. We put together a little montage, some of the lighter moments to remember John McCain.
Most angry has to be Senator John McCain, who just happens to be on our couch. Senator McCain.
He's awfully happy for angry.
Be on the couch.
Tension.
Little trip down memory lane.
The president, over the last couple of days, said that you, as his 08 opponent, would not get the nomination today because in today's Republican Party, you wouldn't be conservative enough. Do you agree with him?
Oh, of course, I always agree with the president. I have a new communication strategy for you. And Mr. Donlan said, what's that? And he said, shut the F up.
You said anytime you come to New York City, we're going to have to provide some barbecue.
John?
Oh, my God.
We have a big basket of barbecue.
Oh, that smells great.
That's wonderful. I'm going to have a plate of shakaroni.
Macaroni and cheese. It's soup. You can't have a plate. You can have a bowl.
You guys are doing a great job.
Thanks so much. I'll pass it on to Steve.
It's okay. We're listening.
Also, he got mad at us a few times, too, over the years. Remember?
You know what? He would occasionally call us jerks. Hey, good morning, you jerks. He would say that. But that was a term of endearment because, you know, he saved those for his special friends. And because he was here so many times, we do regard him as a longtime friend of this program.
You're so right, because Cindy McCain actually said, if he teases you, it means he likes you.
Right. And one time he yelled at us. Remember when the Free Syrian Army was out there yelling Allah Akbar after taking out some type of plane. They said, wait a second, are you sure that these people are friendly with us? He yelled at us. He goes, yes, I was just there. They're friendly with us. They're people we can trust. I said, okay.
All right. Meanwhile, let's talk a little bit of politics these days. The president's approval number is, according to the Wall Street Journal, NBC poll, 90% of Republicans approve of the job the president is doing. Meanwhile, just 10% approve of the job if they are Democrats regarding the president. What's curious, though, is that when you look at the polls, there have been a number of the president's opponents who have said, I'm surprised the number didn't go down further. He's had such legal problem and legal peril, perhaps, but the number doesn't budge because he's got a very durable core.
This is probably one of those stunning polls I've seen over the last 5-10 years. So the President of the United States has been beat on for almost every news outlet. But yet his approval rating has gone up to 46%. And people are saying, wait a second, that's basically where Barack Obama was, where George Bush was, where Bill Clinton was, where all previous presidents are. But yet there's more things coming off his Twitter feed. There's more fights that he is having with other networks, with the media, the things he's saying. After this week of hell, from his doorman turning on him, to his CFO flipping on him, to his former attorney flipping on him, to all this other news swirling around, he had to have taken a beating. So the Wall Street Journal and NBC did another poll. So before Wednesday and all the turbulence, he was at 46%. After all that controversy, it dropped to just 44%, which leads me to think that if Democrats want to make the midterms about the president, or if they want to run down the president, that's a rabbit hole that I think they will not bear any fruit.
Well, you saw something similar to this, after the whole controversy about the children at the border. His poll numbers with Hispanics actually went up 10%. That was curious as well. I think my theory is, one, the American people don't care. I go to dairy breakfasts, I go to parades, I talk to people in the Midwest, in rural Wisconsin. They're not talking about Cohen and Russia or any of that. The other thing is, the reason I think his poll numbers are so durable is they're not built on hype. Barack Obama got a lot of hype. He got a lot of support from the media no matter what he did. These are numbers that are built on solid results. Yeah. So people can look at all the chaos, but they go, my 401k is going up, my son's got a job, my kid moved out of my basement.
Right. You could afford a dog.
I can afford a dog. I got a dog. We'll talk about that a little later. But, I think people are doing better. And in the end, that's what people care about. Well,
according to this, they asked which party best equipped to handle the economy. 43% said the Republicans. That's good news for the Republicans. Only 29% of the Democrats. But the motivation question, which party is more interested in the upcoming election? 63% of Democrats said they had high interest, only 52. So the Republicans are behind by 11 points than that. But Kevin McCarthy was on with Maria over the weekend, and he said that the generic tracking poll, trying to figure out which party you would prefer to see in control of Congress, is exactly where it was the day before the 2016 election. And ominous. How did that turn out?
Yeah, exactly. That's
50-42 in favor of the Dems right now. Meanwhile, 13 minutes after the hour.
Michael Cohen's attorney now backtracking on a claim that the president had advanced knowledge of Russian hacking. So does Mr. Cohen still pose a credible threat to the president? We're going to talk to constitutional law professor Jonathan Turley. He's been thinking about that. He's up early next.
And he's always smiling, by the way. And over a year ago, Andrew Cuomo made this promise to New Yorkers.
We should have free public college for people $125,000 and below.
Yeah, up our taxes more. So why are people getting rejected? Question mark, exclamation point, asterisk.
Remember when Michael Cohen's attorney, Lanny Davis, made this claim about what President Trump knows about that mysterious meeting at Trump Tower with the Russians?
Mr. Cohen has knowledge on certain subjects that should be of interest to the special counsel. Knowledge about the computer crime of hacking and whether or not Mr. Trump knew ahead of time.
Well, now Lanny's walking back those claims, telling the Washington Post over the weekend, quote, I should have been more clear, including with you, that I could not independently confirm what happened. I regret my error. So with all the changes to Cohen's story, does he actually pose a credible threat to the president? Here to weigh in, George Washington University constitutional law professor Jonathan Turley. Jonathan, good morning to you.
Thank you, Steve.
What's up with Lanny?
Well, you know, it's astonishing because when this all was rolled out, Lanny was saying that his client might have evidence of everything from collusion to obstruction to, you know, the Lindbergh baby kidnapping. I mean, it was an incredible list. And what's also sort of telling is that this was the same time that they were rolling out their GoFundMe site to get donations for Michael Cohen.
And, you know, a lot of people said, why does Michael Cohen need a GoFundMe page? And you looked at some of the things that have been happening with these GoFundMe pages, whether it's Mr. Cohen or Peter Strzok or James Comey. There seems to be a thread to them, right?
Yeah, I wrote a piece in The Hill because it's a strange evolution of the role of this site. GoFundMe has become a site where you can essentially purchase testimony, that people go out there and they really ramp up their expected testimony.
What do you mean purchase testimony?
Well, it's because what happens, people like Michael Cohen couldn't get a dime from anyone on the street when he was still saying he would take a bullet for the president. Then suddenly he started to promise that he could bag the president. And they rolled out a GoFundMe site, and he got hundreds of thousands of dollars. Boom. And so we have this weird type of auction among potential witnesses, both pro and anti-Trump, for people to essentially contribute to their testimony. And it's a little unnerving for an attorney, because people could actually change their testimony to give them more of a market position. And for Michael Cohen, he's tried to position himself as far as he can on the anti-Trump site, and it has paid off. It has sold like hotcakes. People have gone to GoFundMe and said, I like that stuff, and they've given him a lot of money.
Interesting stuff. Read about it at thehill.com. Exit question, just 15 seconds. What sort of legal peril is in the president at the conclusion of the week that he wasn't in the week before?
I think Weisselberg is the biggest concern I would have. He's a type of witness that you really worry about. He's detail-oriented. He's involved in virtually every transaction that occurs through the Trump organization. He's the guy that, frankly, as a criminal defense attorney, I would be most concerned with, not Michael Cohen at this point.
He's the guy who's got all the receipts. All right.
Yeah.
Jonathan Turley, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, it would have made all the difference to Bernie Sanders, the DNC now limiting the powers of superdelegates. We're going to talk about that next. Back with some Monday morning headlines and a Fox News alert. The leader of an ISIS affiliate in Afghanistan killed apparently in a U.S. drone strike. Officials say Saeed Orzaki was struck near the border with Pakistan. He is responsible for recent bombings that left hundreds of people dead. 10 other ISIS fighters were also killed. Meanwhile, a member of the U.S. Army's Golden Knights parachute team is among 4 killed in a weekend skydiving plane crash. 31-year-old Staff Sergeant Alex Batizevich was off duty at the time. The plane he was in burst into flames after crashing at the end of the runway in Georgia. One other person on board is in critical condition. The crash is under investigation. And Molly Tibbetts' father gives a heart-wrenching final goodbye to his daughter. Rob Tibbett speaking to thousands packed inside Molly's former high school gymnasium for her funeral, saying, quote, "Today we need to turn the page. We're at the end of a long ordeal, but we need to turn toward Molly's life, because Molly's nobody's victim. Molly's my hero." Christian Rivera, who had been living in the United States illegally for at least 7 years, is accused of chasing and kidnapping Molly before killing her. That's the allegation. All right, Brian.
All right, the DNC voting to limit the influence of superdelegates in their presidential nomination process with one thing in mind for voters.
Making sure that at the end of the day, when the process is done to select the Democratic nominee, that they feel like their candidate got a fair shake.
And many didn't. You'll remember the superdelegates were blamed for swaying the nomination in favor of Hillary Clinton instead of Bernie Sanders before he even got out of the gates, causing an outrage among some Sanders supporters. So will this move help the Democrats heading into 2020? Joining us right now is the former National Justice Director for Bernie Sanders' campaign, Teslin Figueroa. So Teslin, first off, is this a good move for the Democratic Party?
It is absolutely a good move. You know, I am so proud.
for sticking, to his guns and really pushing that through. I only wish that they would have released tapes. Where's Omarosa when you need her? I really would have loved to hear, so you could hear the hypocrisy of it all. People like myself by not allowing party change, by now allowing same-day registration. So this is a wonderful move. It really does show an act of courage to say that we want to take a step to heal that divide from 2016. But it's so much bigger than just Bernie Sanders. It's about actually having a fair democratic process.
Right. To me, it makes it more likely that Sanders is going to run because he already put a quote out there in support of it, saying this in a tweet: "Today's decision by the DNC is an important step." As I'll read off since the prompter's not moving. An important step forward, democratic and responsive to the input of many ordinary Americans, he goes on. Who are superdelegates? Lawmakers, former presidents, other party dignitaries, people who are not part of the primary process. So it almost looks like the favorite son or daughter gets a push above the others. Nancy Pelosi's among the others that are in. In the big picture, though, when it comes to leveling the playing field, do you believe that the Democrats are going to have the Republican-like field of 16, 2 tiers on the debates? Because there's so many names out there.
Well, I'm hoping so. The last time they said, a lot of people will be running, and we saw that it was only really 2 or 3 that actually took the leap and actually got the press coverage, to cover their races. So I'm hoping so. I think it's a good thing when you have competitive campaigns. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not interested in people running just to raise money or to build their profile if they really don't have the true intentions of the American people at hand. That doesn't mean that people that they say, he doesn't have a shot, so he shouldn't run. I think people that don't have a shot should run. They make change like Senator Sanders did. They said he didn't have a chance. He still did not win, but look at the type of reform that he's been able to create within the Democratic Party. And I joined his campaign for that reason, not because I'm a socialist. I say that each and every time because I'm not. But the type of reform that we need within this process, the political process, is to have people run and take that leap. So I'm hoping we have at least 10 or plus more candidates to choose from.
Right. I guess it'll be out there. They could diffuse, but at least you'd have a real process, not Governor O'Malley, who really never even registered, even with it. I don't think anybody, even in Maryland. And then Bernie Sanders came out of nowhere, and Hillary Clinton seemed to hold on with all the money and all the power. But in the big picture, too, clearly the mantra is going to be, I'm not Donald Trump. Don't you agree?
Well, I'm sure that probably will be the mantra. That's the easiest mantra to say. We know you're not Donald Trump. The question is, what are you going to do for people, like myself? That's still going to be something that the Democratic Party is still going to have to challenge. No matter what's going on the other side of the aisle, no matter what's going on, what we see, with investigations and so forth, you're still going to have to answer the question, how are you going to make life better for the average American citizen? And you're actually going to have to ride on what you believe and not who you're not or who you're most like. A lot of candidates, I'm just like Bernie Sanders. Well, that's not enough either. What are you going to do? What are you going to put forward in front of the American people? And I think voters at this time around will be a lot more wise. At least I'm hoping so.
All right. And there's a lot of lawmakers who are saying, don't bring up impeachment. Teslin, do you think you should bring up impeachment if you want to be successful in the midterms?
Well, I don't think impeachment is going to have anything to do with what you're going to do as a congressman. You can certainly bring it up or not bring it up, but what does that have to do with your campaign platform? If your campaign platform is simply, I'm going to impeach Donald Trump and not talking about the actual needs of the constituents of your district, then they're having a problem with how to identify with their voters. You can be against Donald Trump. We get it. We know people are against him. We know there are people for him. We know there are people against him. The question is, are you for the things that matter to me? And I also want to say this. I'm hoping that more African Americans like myself, become independent voters like me. I think that matters. Yeah. One of the things that they did that they changed was now you can change your party affiliation and you can do same-day registration. That's very important.
Teslin, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, 30 minutes before the top of the hour. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's at the
Awesome.
Showing off their jump rope skills right here in New York City, and they are good.
How do you do that?
Skill, Brian, skill.
But do they literally just walk in the streets and saying, I could do this? I got to find out the story. Look at the officer in the back.
And by the way, this is the best exercise ever. It is cardio, it is all that.
But it's like
coordination.
But it's like the 1930s workout. Remember, the Jack LaLanne, here's a chair.
My sisters used to do this, and I used to occasionally jump in, and I could go maybe 4 times, boom, boom, boom,
really?
boom, and then I'd
Did you tell them you were jumping in, or you
No, they would say, "Come on, let's see if you can do it the way we can do it," and I could never do it.
And they sing and they do all of it at the same time.
It's a lot of fun. I bet Dan Bongino did that growing up on the streets of New York City, didn't you, Dano?
Are you kidding me? I was so impressed watching that. My monitor's above the camera. Yeah. I was watching it. The producers in me are like, "We're coming up. Like, start looking at the camera. Stop looking at the cops for a second." That was very impressive. But no, I can't do that.
Yeah. Do you remember? You know what was hot? Jacks. Do you know anybody that plays jacks?
These days, I'm sure they've been outlawed.
You're aging yourself a little bit.
In Wisconsin, they still play jacks.
They still play jacks? If you're playing jacks right now, email us or tweet us.
Hey, Dan Bongino, let's talk a little bit about this. It looks like Axios has gotten their hands on a spreadsheet. It's a list of about 100 different investigations that could be launched if the Democrats win the control of the House. And we're going to roll some of them right here. So clearly, this is to motivate the Republicans. Hey, we got to do everything we can to make sure that they don't win. But at the same time, it's essentially a roadmap of vulnerabilities, isn't it?
You know what it really is? It is a roadmap to the full weaponization of government. And frankly, Steve, it's one of the most frightening things I've seen in a very long time. You know, this has been the Democrats' dream forever. Full weaponization of government by a couple of things. And if you go down that list, you'll see exactly how they plan to do this. It's by using judges to legislate from the bench, effectively usurping power. Using the bureaucracy to endlessly target Donald Trump, his family, and Donald Trump's interests. Not because they're targeting criminality, but because they're targeting Trump. And finally, the use of legislative committees if they take over, not to investigate criminality and malfeasance, Steve, but to create it. That's different. That list is terrifying, and that is the Democrats' dream, and anyone interested in liberty's worst nightmare.
Right, I agree, Steve. That might be what the Republicans want out, but I actually believe it's what the Democrats are going to do. And if they're going to do that, can you tell me what's in America's interest? Is that immigration reform? Is that reining in our welfare system, finding a way to pay for Medicare in the long term? Does that do anything for health care at all? Nothing. All it is we got to knock him out in 2020. Are we really going to waste another 2 years?
Well, Brian, you have to understand, like, they're not interested. Policy proposals went out the window a long time ago. They've never got over the fact that Donald Trump won the election. Right. Their sole goal at this point seems to be to represent everything that's not Donald Trump, but not to stand for anything themselves. If we lose these midterms, the Republican Party, it's going to get really ugly over the next 2 years. This is if you think it's bad now, it's going to get a lot worse after November.
Adam Schiff will be.
Nothing to do with ideas. It's all to kill him off by investigation.
Right, and even when they do discuss ideas, they entirely flub it every time. I mean, look at their response to a very effective, at this point, I think most sound people, reasonable people can agree, the tax cut plan. Their response was so discombobulated because they had nothing to say. You had Nancy Pelosi out there running around talking about crumbs, $1,000 crumbs. I mean, has she ever eaten at a table with the average American family? $1,000 goes a really long way, I assure you.
There you go. All right. Meanwhile, Salon has a headline wondering this: Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the next Barack Obama. What do you think?
Yeah, you know, I thought about this. I'm sitting there getting ready for this. You got to wash your face in the morning, throw some Visine in your eyes because my eyes were all red when I woke up. And I'm like, you know, is she or is she not? I thought, yes, she is like Barack Obama. So I thought of two things. Number one, she plays fast and loose with the facts. She doesn't really have a firm grasp of what's going on like Obama did, so they rely on emotion. Her response to, remember, she gave the example about the military budget on that Trevor Noah show. She was completely off. She gave the example on the Palestinian situation over in Israel, had really no idea there. She even acknowledged it. They asked her about how to pay for the entitlement programs. She had no grasp at all of the economics of it. So Obama used to do the same thing. Remember, if you like your plan, you could keep your plan. And secondly, she's like Obama with identity politics. When you don't have an answer to a question about how you're actually going to pay for this expansive government you want, you return to the identity politics thing. And that was a central tenet of Obama's strategy from day one. And it worked. So yes, she is like Barack Obama. Whether she can win a presidential election like Barack Obama is completely different.
Right. Keep in mind, he was 48. She's 28. And he already had years in a law firm. He was a state senator. She is she is, I think it's an insult to President Obama to compare the two.
I think they were both community organizers.
Well, and they're both suspicious of capitalism. One admits to being a socialist. The other one was a little bit more on the down low with it. But I think they're the same in that regard as well.
Well, Barack Obama had a little more tactical skill, too, in answering questions. I mean, at one point, and listen, I've said this before, I've run for Congress. I mean this. I applaud her, what she did. She worked really hard to do that. But that you have to know stuff at this point.
Yeah.
This is a serious position in the U.S. Congress. And she's admitted in interviews, hey, I really just don't know a couple times on these issues. You have to know stuff. That's the part of being a congressman that hurts.
Well, we know a lot about you after this interview today, Dan. We know that you wash your face in the morning, you use Visine, you had bloodshot eyes. And if there's video of cops jump roping, you're just going to stop and stare.
You're going to be transfixed.
Thank you.
I can tell. They were like, we're coming, because I'm sitting here watching the TV screen up there like that. And I never look good on TV when you're watching the TV.
Thanks for coming in, Dan.
You got it,
All
guys.
right.
See ya.
Take care. We're going to turn now to some of your headlines. Pope Francis is refusing to comment on bombshell allegations that he knew about the abuse at the hands of a disgraced former Archbishop of Washington and covered it up. The pontiff telling reporters on a flight back from Ireland, quote, "Read the document carefully and judge it for yourselves. I will not say one word on this." Now, that document is from a former Vatican diplomat, and he claims that the Pope knew about Theodore McCarrick's abuse of lower priests 5 years ago. McCarrick resigned last month. A police officer with no fire training fearlessly runs into a burning home, saving a family with 6 children. Take a look.
Is everybody out? Where are they at? They're inside? I got people inside that are trapped. Hey, come on, man. The house is on fire. Get out.
Officer Sam Click running from room to room, saving kids as young as 8 months old from the home near Dallas. Click was on patrol when he saw flames and heard screaming. Despite his sergeant's orders not to, he says he ran in fearing the fire department was too far away. The whole family is safe. Thanks for him. What a hero. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, free college program isn't making the grade, rejecting nearly 70% of the applicants. The liberal, Cuomo, initially said 940,000 families would qualify. Well, it turns out a little more than 20,000 students actually got the scholarship last year. That's only about 3% of the state college students. Critics say there are simply too many restrictions for students to qualify. And those are your headlines. Not working out.
All right, so much for free school in New York.
It's free if you can meet the many qualifications. All right. Meanwhile, straight ahead, Twitter's CEO, Jack Dorsey, recently making a stunning admission.
We need to constantly show that we are not adding our own bias, which I fully admit is more left-leaning.
Well, our next guest claims he's been shadow banned from Twitter. Jim Hansen is here with what needs to happen now. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey admitting his company is more left-leaning than right.
Are we doing something according to political ideology or viewpoints? And we are not, period. We need to constantly show that we are not adding our own bias, which I fully admit is more left-leaning.
Social media giants have recently been accused of banning conservatives on their sites, like our next guest, who claims he's been shadow banned from Twitter and even met with company officials about it.
Here with more on what they had to say when he confronted Twitter, the president of the Security Studies, Jim Hansen. Jim, what makes you think you're shadow banned?
Well, I am. It's not a question of whether we are or not. There's a tool you can use to test your account that shows whether or not the Twitter quality filter is in effect for your account. Now, what happens is Twitter's CEO is correct when he says they didn't build a tool to discriminate based on viewpoint, but they built a tool that ends up doing that anyhow. And it's because liberals are much more likely to report an account for abuse, to block accounts, to use all the tools that Twitter gave them to complain about content they don't like. They do it, according to studies, 3 times as often as conservatives. So Twitter's quality filter counts up each one of these black marks and says, geez, these must be bad guys because they say things that make people mad. And eventually that puts you in what Twitter calls low quality, and then your tweets are no longer seen by as many people as they were before. We've got definitive proof of that.
Wow. Okay, so first of all, statement from Twitter spokesperson. They say we do not shadow ban. We are aware that some accounts are not automatically populating in our search box and shipping a change to address this. To be clear, our behavioral ranking doesn't make judgments based on political views or the substance of tweets, as you said. So here's my question. It's a private business, but we also know it's the town square, if you will, for a lot of people. So are they inviting the government to come in and regulate them? What's the answer here?
Security Studies Group put out a fact sheet on our website, securitystudies.org, that details how this is happening and the damage it's doing both to our information landscape, that public square you mentioned, and the political discourse. Because right now, conservatives and Republican candidates are disproportionately affected by this limiting of their exposure. Consequently, that is some kind of in-kind contribution by Twitter to Democrat candidates and causes. So we're sending that fact sheet to the Federal Elections Commission. We're sending to the Security and Exchange Commission because Twitter, even though they're a private company, is publicly traded. Therefore, when they say things that are demonstrably false, like they're not shadow banning, then they're lying to their shareholders and the public. So we don't want the government to have to do this. We want Twitter to fix it. We just want a level playing field so the best ideas can win.
Yeah, there was word, there was predictions that the social media conglomerates were going to rebalance things in the midterms, and we're seeing it right now. But they didn't plan on this type of backlash, which you're experiencing, and Jim Hanson's making sure to get that word out. Jim, thanks.
Thank you, Jim.
You got it.
All right, so he's still pushing back. Meanwhile, a reporter tries to get Tiger Woods to trash the president in his post-game tournament conference.
He's the president of the United States, and you have to respect the office, and no matter who's in the office.
They asked him like 9 separate times the same question. More on that exchange coming up.
Plus, a veteran volunteer group helping pick up the pieces from Hurricane Harvey 1 year later. Janice Dean flew down to Houston for a first-hand look, and she gives us an update next.
Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey admitting his company is more left-leaning than right.
Are we doing something according to political ideology or viewpoints? And we are not, period. We need to constantly show that we are not adding our own bias, which I fully admit is more left-leaning.
Social media giants have recently been accused of banning conservatives on their sites, like our next guest, who claims he's been shadow banned from Twitter and even met with company officials about it.
Here with more on what they had to say when he confronted Twitter, the president of the Security Studies, Jim Hanson. Jim, what makes you think you're shadow banned?
Well, I am. It's not a question of whether we are or not. There's a tool you can use to test your account that shows whether or not the Twitter quality filter is in effect for your account. Now, what happens is Twitter's CEO is correct when he says they didn't build a tool to discriminate based on viewpoint, but they built a tool that ends up doing that anyhow. And it's because liberals are much more likely to report an account for abuse, to block accounts, to use all the tools that Twitter gave them to complain about content they don't like. They do it, according to studies, 3 times as often as conservatives. So Twitter's quality filter counts up each one of these black marks and says, geez, these must be bad guys because they say things that make people mad. And eventually that puts you in what Twitter calls low quality, and then your tweets are no longer seen by as many people as they were before. We've got definitive proof of that.
Wow. Okay, so first of all, statement from Twitter spokesperson. They say we do not shadow ban. We are aware that some accounts are not automatically populating in our search box and shipping a change to address this. To be clear, our behavioral ranking doesn't make judgments based on political views or the substance of tweets, as you said. So here's my question. It's a private business, but we also know it's the town square, if you will, for a lot of people. So are they inviting the government to come in and regulate them? What's the answer here?
Security Studies Group put out a fact sheet on our website, securitystudies.org, that details how this is happening and the damage it's doing both to our information landscape, that public square you mentioned, and the political discourse. Because right now, conservatives and Republican candidates are disproportionately affected by this limiting of their exposure. Consequently, that is some kind of in-kind contribution by Twitter to Democrat candidates and causes. So we're sending that fact sheet to the Federal Elections Commission. We're sending to the Security Securities and Exchange Commission because Twitter, even though they're a private company, is publicly traded. Therefore, when they say things that are demonstrably false, like they're not shadow banning, then they're lying to their shareholders and the public. So we don't want the government to have to do this. We want Twitter to fix it. We just want a level playing field so the best ideas can win.
Yeah, there was word, there was predictions that the social media conglomerates were going to rebalance things in the midterms, and we're seeing it right now. But they didn't plan on this type of backlash, which you're experiencing, and Jim Hanson's making sure to get that word out. Jim, thanks.
Thank you, Jim.
You got it.
All right, so he's still pushing back. Meanwhile, a reporter tries to get Tiger Woods to trash the president in his post-game tournament conference.
He's the president of the United States, and you have to respect the office. And no matter who's in the office.
They asked him like 9 separate times the same question. More on that exchange coming up.
Plus, a veteran volunteer group helping pick up